The Aryan Invasion Theory, a concept introduced in the 19th century, has been a central and controversial aspect of the history of the Indian subcontinent. At its core, the theory suggests that Indo-European-speaking people, commonly referred to as Aryans, invaded or migrated into the Indian subcontinent around 1500 BCE. According to this theory, these newcomers brought with them advanced knowledge of horses, chariots, and Sanskrit, ultimately establishing the foundation for the Vedic civilization, one of the world's oldest religious and philosophical systems. But how accurate is this narrative? And what is its real significance? The Aryan Invasion Theory was first formulated by European scholars during the British colonial era. British archaeologist Mortimer Wheeler and philologist Max Muller were prominent figures in advancing this idea, initially based on linguistic similarities between Sanskrit and European languages. Muller proposed that a group of Indo-European migrants entered northern India, displacing or subjugating the indigenous population. This hypothesis was shaped by the racial and colonial biases prevalent in Europe at the time, where the term Aryan was erroneously linked to a supposed racial category. According to this narrative, the Aryans' arrival coincided with the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's earliest urban societies. The ruins of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, discovered in the early 20th century, were thought to be evidence of this decline, attributed to an invasion or conquest by the Aryans. The theory claimed that the peaceful, sophisticated Dravidian people of the Indus Valley were overrun by the warlike Aryans, who introduced their language, social structure, and religion. However, over the last few decades, the Aryan invasion theory has been challenged and revised by scholars from various disciplines. Archaeological, linguistic, and genetic evidence has called into question the validity of the original invasion narrative. One major critique is the lack of archaeological evidence of a violent invasion. Excavations at Indus Valley sites do not show widespread destruction or mass graves that would suggest a large-scale conflict between Aryans and the native population. In place of the invasion model, many historians and archaeologists now favor what is known as the Aryan migration theory. This theory posits that rather than a sudden and forceful invasion, Indo-European-speaking peoples gradually migrated into the Indian subcontinent over several centuries. This migration was likely part of a larger movement of peoples across Central Asia, driven by environmental changes and the search for new pastures. The gradual nature of this migration would have allowed for significant cultural exchange between the newcomers and the existing populations. Recent advances in genetic studies also shed light on this debate. DNA evidence suggests that there was indeed some genetic influx into the Indian subcontinent from Central Asia around 2000 BCE, consistent with the time frame of the supposed Aryan migration. However, this evidence also points to a much more complex picture than the simple idea of a conquering race replacing an indigenous one. The genetic blending suggests long periods of coexistence, rather than abrupt replacement. Furthermore, the indigenous Aryan theory has gained some traction, particularly among Indian scholars and historians. Proponents of this view argue that the Aryans were not external migrants at all, but rather an indigenous people who evolved within the Indian subcontinent. This theory emphasizes the continuity of Indian civilization from the time of the Indus Valley through the Vedic period, suggesting that the development of Sanskrit and Vedic culture occurred locally, without external influence. Critics of the Aryan invasion theory have pointed out that the colonial context in which it was developed played a significant role in shaping its conclusions. The British, in their role as colonial rulers, may have promoted the theory in part to justify their domination over the Indian people. By presenting Indian civilization as the result of external influence, the theory undermined the idea of indigenous achievement and autonomy. One of the most significant shifts in recent years has been the increasing emphasis on multidisciplinary approaches to studying this period of history. Rather than relying solely on linguistic or literary sources, researchers are now integrating insights from archaeology, genetics, and even climate science to form a more nuanced picture of the past. For instance, the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization is now often attributed to environmental factors, such as shifts in river patterns and prolonged droughts, rather than external invasions. The debate over the Aryan Invasion Theory also carries cultural and political implications, especially in modern India. The idea of an invading Aryan race has been used at times to justify social hierarchies, including the caste system, by framing the Aryans as a superior group that imposed its social order on the subcontinent. In contrast, those who reject the invasion theory often emphasize the continuity and indigenous roots of Indian culture, seeking to reclaim a narrative of historical independence and cultural pride. Today, the Aryan invasion theory continues to spark debate among scholars, politicians, and the general public. It is a reminder of the ways in which history can be shaped by contemporary beliefs and ideologies, as well as the importance of critical, evidence-based scholarship. The Aryan invasion theory, in its original form, has largely been discredited, but the questions it raises about migration, cultural exchange, and identity remain relevant. In conclusion, the story of the Aryans and their relationship to ancient Indian civilization is far more complex than the early invasion theory suggested. Whether through migration, indigenous development, or a combination of both, the emergence of Vedic culture was likely the result of many interacting factors. As new evidence continues to emerge, our understanding of this pivotal period in history will undoubtedly continue to evolve.